Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Well, over the last few days, President Trump has displayed the epitome of American strength in these negotiations. Very Reagan-esque what he's doing, and I think the president's doing an incredible job. And remember, Griff, he's cleaning up the messes of Joe Biden and Barack Obama. It's going to take time, but the president's off to an incredible start. We have incredible momentum, and this is very similar to what Ronald Reagan went through when he first started talking to the Soviets. So I'm very inspired. I'm very hopeful. And I know this president, he's the greatest negotiator of our time. He's going to get an amazing deal for this country. I have no doubt.
Nate Morris, candidate for Senate in Kentucky. We wish you luck. Thank you for taking time to be here
today. Thank you, Griff.
Welcome back to More War Monday, folks. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, the war will end. When and how are the big questions that we have to get answered. The dramatic events the world witnessed at Elmendorf Air Force Base finally opened the door to a real and lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine, thanks to only one man, President Donald J. Trump. I've said that many times, that I will know that the war can be ended only if the president meets one-on-one with Vladimir Putin, and now he has. That just happened. And as I speak to you now, the Ukraine president and European leaders are meeting with the president in Washington, D.C. to see if they can come to a way to get to yes and accept a deal that will stop the killing. Are we there yet? I doubt it. But we finally started for real. Unfortunately, there are many things working against peace, like the stupid media narrative pushers, the warmonger politicians, and the globalists, and the World Economic Forum, and NATO, and the European Union, and the simple impact of the massive inertia of war that is extremely difficult to overcome, even when the warring parties want to end it. Well, my guest today to discuss all this is a regular guest on the show, National Security Strategist David Pine. David is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms and Headquarters Staff Officer who oversaw armaments cooperation with the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas from 2000 to 2003. He currently serves as president of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security. David, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Hey, Rob, it's great to be with you today.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. I knew we would have to have you on for a series of shows once this ball started rolling, so it's been too long, my friend. Mr. Producer, if you could bring up the map of Ukraine, I would appreciate it as I asked David this question. David, just to give folks a refresher on the lay of the land and maybe some insight into what this map is showing from the perspective of what Vladimir Putin apparently is reported asked for in the conversations he had with President Trump. I'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Russia currently controls about 19.1% of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory. 4% of that is Crimea, another 3% that they controlled in the Donbass peoples, or the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics before the war. So they controlled 7% before the war. They've conquered another 12% so far. Putin had been asking for an additional 3.6%. That would include areas in Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. And he's given up over 2/3 of those territorial demands. That's a massive concession on Russia's part, a massive victory on Trump's part, that he has got Putin to agree to a total peace, a comprehensive peace agreement, not just a ceasefire that's temporary, but a comprehensive peace deal in which he would give up claims to any additional Ukrainian territory in Zaporozhye and Kherson and just taken another 1% of Ukraine's territory in the Donetsk region. That is a critically important strategic strategic area because it is heavily fortified and industrialized, but it is a very small portion of Ukraine's territory. So I believe that the peace deal that Trump negotiated with Putin and was nearly ready to sign, essentially with Ukraine's approval, is what he's pushing today. And we'll just have to see if Zelensky and his EU buddies sign onto it.
Yeah, if you look at that map, and that's why I wanted you to talk about it, David, because the press isn't given this the right reporting on it. As a matter of fact, it's all bad Putin, good Zelensky, bad Trump siding with Putin is that's essentially the way I would encapsulate the reporting on this. But so the red area that's hash marked to the northeast there, just west of the front line, which is the dark red line, folks, that goes from the northeast top of Luhansk down past Donetsk and then into the areas down coming into Odessa and everything. The blue hashtags are what Putin is saying he will give up, the way I understood it. And the red is what he's requesting to have. Is that the right picture?
That's correct. So there's also regions in Kharkiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv, and also Dnipropetrovsk. All those four regions, Russia currently controls small slivers of territory. They're willing to give those back. It's not clear if they would also give up the Mykolaiv part because that's kind of strategically located. But at least three of those regions that he'd be willing to give back to Ukraine in exchange for this, again, 1% of territory in Donetsk, and that's basically about 23.5% of the Donetsk Oblast region. So it's a substantial part of Donetsk, but essentially Russia is in the process of conquering the rest of Donetsk with some breakthroughs in the Pokrovsk region.
Yeah, I mean they surged forward like 12 or 13 kilometers just east and northeast of Pokrovsk there, which is a key logistics point to it, and it cuts it away from the rest of that area in the red hashtags. What else is important about that small area of Donetsk? Is there like something economically important there, or is it just about that's where I think they call it their Fortress Ukraine area is? It's been their main line of defense, holding back Russian forces.
Well, this goes back all the way to 2008 when Bush, threatened to actually did have a NATO declaration that he would expand NATO into Ukraine and Georgia. And Putin reportedly replied, this is according to CIA Director William Burns, who was serving as U.S. ambassador to Russia at that time. He said that he told Bush that if you bring Ukraine into NATO or attempt to do so in a de facto way, Russia will take back Crimea and the Donbass. So when Russia invaded, obviously there was a civil war going on in the Donbass region, which is one of the main reasons that Russia invaded Ukraine in the first place. Is that, and this is backed up, according to my sources, is that Ukraine was preparing an offensive to retake, Russian allied controlled territory, separatist controlled territory in the Donbass region. And the Russian invasion, at least in part, was to preempt that offensive and to kind of, according to them, obviously liberate the Donbass region from Ukrainian control. So that's why this has always been this has been the main territorial element of the what they call the special military operation, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, is the Donbass region. So that's why it's Putin's willing to give up Zaporozhye and Kherson. These are regions that are primarily on the right bank of the Dnipro River, or otherwise have kind of river or natural barriers that form a national frontier between Russia and Ukraine post-war.
And why is that red area so of a concern to Kyiv and their military commanders? What's the strategic military significance of that? That it seems like a very small area to me. I mean, it's they've probably got some defensive lines that they've spent a lot of time building up, but obviously they're not that effective. If the Russians could penetrate 13 kilometers in one 24-hour period, which has not happened really in a long time since the beginning of this special military operation. What is the strategic military significance of that?
So the primary strategic military significance of the Donetsk region is that it's Russia's main front. It's main battlefront that it's been attempting to take, meaning that Russia could easily roll up Ukraine in a northern offensive, but they've shied away from another massive blitzkrieg. Some of your viewers may recall that Russia was able to conquer 27% of Ukrainian territory in just days, perhaps 5 days to the first 3 weeks of the war, and they partially encircled Kyiv. They took substantial portions of Sumy and Chernihiv region, all of which they withdrew from after unilaterally after the Istanbul Agreement. Putin thought was a done deal that was going to end the war on April 9th, 2022. So it's only a strategically important region because Russia has refused to use its superior tank forces and mechanized divisions to roll up Ukrainian forces on the east side of the Dnipro River with some kind of mobile northern offensive.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I'm a little bit confused because the Ukrainians could just build another line of fortifications and defensive positions outside of that region. Is there something with the terrain, or what's the deal with their concern about this? The Ukrainians. Yeah,
so that whole remaining region of Donetsk, again, about 23.5%, according to Fox News today, is it's a fortified industrial belt. There's no Ukrainian fortified lines beyond that area. It's pretty much open pasture as you get through the Donetsk into Dnipropetrovsk region, which borders on the Dnipro River and other surrounding areas, Kharkiv. There's really no fortified line. What I'm saying is, if Putin decided to renege, if he decided if he got the Ukrainians to withdraw from Donetsk in its entirety, and then use that as a jumping off point, within weeks, there wouldn't be anything stopping the Russian forces in terms of substantial fortifications from reaching the Dnipro River line. So that obviously there's security guarantees involved. Putin has said he's open to Article 5 style guarantees. What that means to me is that Putin is making clear that he has no intention whatsoever from ever attacking Ukraine ever again, providing his minimal demands are met. And he's given up several important minimal demands that he had before. So that's why this makes the deal between Trump and Putin seem like such a great deal from the U.S. side.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to devote a whole segment to the Article 5 like security guarantees, because I think that's important. I mean, I'm opposed to U.S. troops being on the ground in Ukraine in any way whatsoever. Always have been. But the interesting thing, though, is, and we'll get into this in the next segment, is the press propaganda narrative from the West. They continue to push it. We'll see a little clip from one in there, but there's been no mention of Odessa. And, the propaganda press and the propaganda globalists have always said he's going to take Odessa. He's going to take Odessa. Then he's going to roll into the rest of Europe. So I want to continue this conversation on the other side of the break, David. David Pine, former U.S. Army planner, and strategist, and he's very familiar with this part of the world, weapons agreements and those kinds of things with the Soviet Union even. We'll be right back.
You know there is concern from the Europeans that President Zelensky is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup tomorrow. Can you?
No, it isn't. That's not why they're coming as back. That's not true. No, but that's not why that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming.
That February Oval Office meeting
here tomorrow
in front of television cameras where President Zelensky.
Do you know how many meetings we've had since then?
Oh, no, I know. And I was just up in Alaska watching the one with Vladimir Putin where a red carpet rolled out.
No, but it was Zelensky. We've had more meetings. We've had one meeting with Putin and like a dozen meetings with Zelensky. So, but that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans. We talked to them last week. There were meetings in the UK over the previous weekend.
And they said President Trump was going to demand a ceasefire
as early as Thursday. No. But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
But the president told those European leaders last week that he wanted a ceasefire. The president went on television, said he would walk out of the meeting if Vladimir Putin didn't agree with one. He said there would be severe consequences if he didn't agree to one. He said he'd walk out in 2 minutes. He spent 3 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and he did not get one. So there's
because
some
obviously
messages.
things happened during that meeting. Well, because obviously look, our goal here is not to stage some production for the world to say, oh, how dramatic, he walked out. Our goal here is to have a peace agreement, to end this war, okay? And obviously we felt, and I agreed, that there was enough progress, not a lot of progress, but enough progress made in those talks to allow us to move to the next phase. If not, we wouldn't be having Zelensky flying all the way over here. We wouldn't be having all the Europeans coming all the way over here. Now understand, and take with a grain of salt, I'm not saying we're on the verge of a peace deal, but I am saying that we saw movement, enough movement to justify a follow-up meeting with Zelensky and the Europeans, enough movement for us to dedicate even more time to this. You talk about the sanctions. Look, at the end of the day, if peace is not going to be possible here, and this is just going to continue on as a war, people will continue to die by the thousands. The president has that option to then come in and impose new sanctions. But if he did this now, the moment the president puts those additional sanctions, that's the end of the talks. You've basically locked in at least another year to year and a half of war and death and destruction. We may unfortunately wind up there, but we don't want to wind up there. We want to wind up with a peace deal that ends this war so Ukraine can go on with the rest of their lives and rebuild their country and be assured that this is never going to happen again. That's the goal here. We're going to do everything possible to make that happen if it's doable. It will require both sides to make concessions. It will require both sides to get things they're asking for. That's how these deals are made, whether we like it or not.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday and the stupid media narrative. I couldn't think of a better quote from a high-ranking official, let alone the Secretary of State, former Senator Marco Rubio there. And that's kind of been the way this war has been treated in the media from the Western world's perspective, is pushing a stupid media narrative. And my guest today is David Pine, former Army strategist and planner. Oversaw the armaments cooperation agreements with the Soviet Union and a whole host of other countries around the world, but focusing in on Ukraine and Russia now with this agreement and the talks that are going on. I'm watching it on television right now. I don't have the audio up, but they're meeting with the Europeans and Zelensky and all of that, and the president is laying it out, what's doable. David, speaking of stupid media narratives, the president put one to rest last night when he said no Crimea and no NATO membership. I'm sure that broke all of the globalists' hearts.
Yeah, I mean, the deal that was actually negotiated before the summit essentially was that the U.S. and probably the EU would and Ukraine would recognize Russian annexation de jure of Crimea and the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, that 3% of pre-war Russian-controlled territory, and then the rest would be they would view as de facto controlled. So Ukraine would not cede those territories, but they would essentially concede that they will remain under Russian control pending further negotiations. So I think that's the best deal we can possibly get from Russia. they were very firm in demanding, all of Zaporozhye and Kherson again. Trump got them to back down. They were very firm in demanding Ukrainian demilitarization. Apparently, they backed down on that. I mean, that's huge alone. They were very firm in saying that no NATO. Obviously, there's no NATO in this agreement for Ukraine. There never was. That was a pipe dream. But I would presume that Russia will demand that all Western troops, all NATO troops, be withdrawn in bases from Ukraine's territory, but that Ukraine can essentially remain a NATO military ally. I mean, that's a huge concession, because neutrality was a key Russian demand, and apparently they've withdrawn that demand as well. So those are probably the three biggest concessions that we've seen on the Russian side. On the U.S. side, Trump has conceded that a ceasefire is unnecessary, that it's actually counterproductive, because what we need is a final peace agreement, and that's not going to get, if there's a ceasefire, Ukraine's not going to have an incentive to sign a final peace deal, because the fighting will have already be ended, and the immediate threat to Ukraine will have been averted. So that's a big concession, as on the U.S. side, as well as Trump's threat to impose secondary sanctions. That's pretty much off the table, and barring some kind of 180-degree turn, which I don't foresee Trump to make.
What do you? I don't know if you heard anything. I didn't, but I was thinking about them. Is that the United States has certain things it can offer unilaterally to Russia that beyond the removing the stick of the sanctions for the collateral sanctions. And those kind of things. But what other types of non-military things do you think were talked about, or if you heard anything that were discussed or offered, or at least put on the table between Trump and Putin? Anything?
Yeah, so President Putin, the Russian delegation included a lot of, top Russian business moguls. I think their finance minister and at least one other official from their economic side attended those meetings, and they ended up not being part of the meeting, because initially it was going to be just Trump and Putin and interpreters. That was dropped, and it was transformed into 3-on-3 meetings with the interpreters, with Secretary Rubio, of course, and Steve Witkoff and Lavrov on the Russian side, and then one other Ushakov from the foreign ministry. So that was the extent of the meetings. But there were a lot of other folks, a lot of cabinet heads on the U.S. side. Hegseth, I think, was there among others, and the Russians had a big delegation as well. And those principles pretty much stayed out. But the very fact, essentially Putin came to offer Trump massive Russian economic cooperation in terms of energy deals, oil, natural resources, rare earth minerals. Those are things that Trump wants. He stated a desire to have a geostrategic partnership with Russia post-war that's based on economic interests. I would hope some security interests as well, to try to neutralize the Sino-Russian alliance. But even if it's just economic, that would be a huge deal. And of course, that would include dropping pretty much all of U.S. economic sanctions imposed from 2014 onward as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the China aspect of this. I would be thinking, hey, we've got to have a sweetener in this deal that helps separate those two from that Sino-Russia deal that they made because of Biden's bad decision making. Do you think that that's a strategic goal of the president and the team, or?
I think it is, and I think Trump is actually open to some of Russia's other requests that include a withdrawal of all 20,000 U.S. troops from Eastern Europe. Those are troops that weren't there essentially. I think before the war we had maybe 4,000 or 5,000 troops in Eastern Europe, and they were there on a temporary basis. Now we have 20,000 troops permanently deployed. So Putin would like to see all Western NATO troops withdrawn from Eastern Europe, but principally U.S. troops. So I think that's on the table. That was one of Russia's initial demands when Rubio met with Lavrov back in February, I think, early this year. So that's something that needs to happen. Ideally, we would recognize a Russian sphere of influence in the former Soviet Union outside of the Baltic republics. That's something that particularly in Central Asia, and even to some extent in Ukraine, that's something that Putin's been very avid to get. China's been making inroads in Central Asia. Now the U.S. is as well with this, corridor agreement with Armenia and Azerbaijan. We want to see more cooperative economic deals with Russia that would include, all the things I talked about previously, plus U.S. investment in Russia. As well as technological transfers and exchanges going both ways. And those are some of the things that I think Trump wants to do. And I think Trump shares our vision of getting Russia out of BRICS, taking the R out of BRICS, to break them off and maybe bring them into a Western trade bloc that actually counters BRICS. But that would require everything to align perfectly and Trump to make all the right decisions in terms of Russia.
Yeah, it'd be tough because, we removed them from the G8, right? And now it's the G7 again as a sanction. And I think we tried to remove them from the international banking system, the electronic system that ensures transfers, the SWIFT system. Exactly. So, that's one of the reasons why BRICS was created, wasn't it? Because of the SWIFT system and this tendency to try to destroy countries' economies, right?
Well, the BRICS actually came out of kind of a tripolar alliance between Russia, China, and India that originated with former Russian Prime Minister Yevgeny Primakov in 1996, which was actually 97, I think, which was a direct response to Clinton's decision to expand NATO eastward. So I think BRICS has been a long time in the making. Some kind of essentially new East Bloc alliance, both economic and security. Obviously, China and India have major difficulties. They're not true allies, but Russia is allied very clearly with China and also India as well. A lot of people don't realize that India has been a long time Russian ally since the early 1970s during Soviet days.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement strategically going on, as you mentioned, the Central Asia move that the president, when he made the peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that corridor, that's a key leverage point, especially against Iran, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's essentially expanding, trying to expand the U.S. sphere of influence into the Caucasus region, perhaps even into Central Asia, where we haven't had a military presence, obviously, since I think 2014 or 2004, during the War on Terror, when, Putin initially allowed U.S. military forces to be stationed in a couple of former Soviet republics in Central Asia. But yeah, I think given location, it's essentially along Iran's northwestern border. There is a potential for the creation of a U.S. military base in that corridor, which is Armenian territory, or perhaps even in Azerbaijan, which is essentially an Israeli ally. So we don't want to cause a lot more trouble in that region, and most importantly, we want to partner with Russia to ensure peace and stability around the world. And the Middle East is one of the key regions where I think Trump understands that Russia could be a very useful player if they were to collaborate with the U.S. To avoiding future conflicts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's being reported that somebody in the Iranian leadership's headed to Armenia today for some talks. I bet they're worried. We'll be right back with David Pine on More War Monday on the Rob Maness Show here at Worldview Tube. I'll see you in a second.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the WorldViewTube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the WorldViewTube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Do you think that it's the right strategy to now focus on that broader peace deal?
That meeting was a disaster. It was an embarrassment for the United States. It was a failure. Putin got everything he wanted. I mean, first of all, he wanted that photo op, right? He wanted to be absolved of his war crimes in front of the world. He was invited to the United States. War criminals are not normally invited to the United States of America. He is intentionally murdering civilians. He's kidnapping children. And now he got to stand next to the president of the United States, legitimized in the view of the world. Second, he didn't have to give up anything, nothing. Right? President Trump said he wanted a ceasefire. It appears the ceasefire wasn't even seriously discussed. And then third, there's no consequences. Trump said, if I don't get a ceasefire, Putin's going to pay a price. And then he walked out of that meeting saying, I didn't get a ceasefire. I didn't get a peace deal. And I'm not even considering sanctions. You heard Secretary Rubio downplay sanctions. And so Putin walks away with his photo op with zero commitments made and zero consequences. What a great day for Russia.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. The leftist politician warmongers, I picked a leftist there, but the politician warmongers are going absolutely nuts because contrary to everything that guy just said, it is a good thing. Good things came out of this meeting. My guest today is David Pine, former Army officer, a strategist and planner, president of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, supervised and oversaw the armaments cooperation agreements with countries like the Soviet Union. So he knows a little bit about this part of the world and about the issues associated with it. And he's already been in the show for 30 minutes talking about the good things that have come out of it and what Putin has given up in this potential agreement, which I'll be honest with you, I was pleasantly surprised. David, welcome back. I was pleasantly surprised to see the Russians give up these things that they were hardcore on, because honestly, my expectations were pretty low on that. I mean, it's incredible that this president is the only person that could get them to do that. Now, he's got a whole team that's laid a lot of groundwork, and Steve Woodcock's done a lot of work at everything. But contrary to the crazy warmonger politicians, I think we're going to move forward.
Yeah, I think this is those concessions are really an indicator to the extent to which Russian President Vladimir Putin really wants peace. He wouldn't have made those concessions if he wasn't serious about a peace deal with the U.S. He views President Trump as not an honest broker in terms of negotiating the deal. Obviously, the U.S. has been fighting on the side of Ukraine pretty much the whole war in terms of arms, intelligence, helping to kill off Russian troops, target their nuclear arsenal. We've done all kinds of nasty things to Russia. Putin hasn't responded in kind. He's shown tremendous strategic restraint. Obviously, he's a brutal dictator. But Zelensky's right there with him, killing off Ukrainian opposition leaders, refusing to hold elections, as Trump stated, a dictator without elections. And now they're meeting together, Zelensky and EU leaders, as you stated, currently in the White House, meeting with President Trump. I suspect President Trump is, according to reports that I've read on, liberal media, New York Times, he's likely pressuring Zelensky to take the deal that includes surrender or giving up the Donbass, or rather the 1% of Ukrainian territory in Western Donetsk, in exchange for some Russian-held territory in 3 to 4 other regions. Combined with NATO Article 5 security guarantees, which by my estimates don't amount to much because the U.S. the U.S. doesn't intend to make any, according to Trump, he doesn't intend to make any formal guarantees. But the guarantee that we would make is a continued flow of U.S. arms sales to Ukraine, essentially indefinitely, and that's something that President Putin would not have accepted in terms of his minimal demands that he'd articulated prior to this meeting.
Yeah, exactly right. We've got some hands in the audience. Let's go ahead and take some questions from over there. Shell's our hostess. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Liz, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, gentlemen. My question is, do you think that a lot of this has been delayed because of all the negative press that the left has done, and that gives Zelensky false confidence to keep this going and going and going?
Well, I think it's actually President Trump that he, for the last 3.5 months, or really 3 months, he sided with the neocons, giving Zelensky a blank check of continued U.S. arms sales, a minerals deal that was essentially written on Zelensky's terms, not Trump's, and basically telling him, we'll keep giving you offensive intelligence, everything you need to fight Russia. Making threats against Russia. He made nuclear threats against Russia, said he redeployed a couple Ohio-class submarines to get closer to Russia to, threaten a nuclear first strike against the Russian Federation. A lot of things that were unproductive, I think, that kind of postponed a potential peace deal. He himself had stated, I think, in around early May or thereabouts, that he knew that the war would only end with once he met directly and in person with President Putin, and now he's done that. So, he hasn't made his timeline. He promised initially ending the war on day 1 or 2 of his administration. That he promised 100 days, and those fell through because he wasn't willing to compromise with Russia outside of the 22-point Witkoff plan, which probably conceded maybe half of Russia's demands. But now we see the Russians backtracking and accepting much of the Witkoff plan, with just a couple key changes, such as the Donetsk region. So I think President Trump is putting America first. I feel extremely confident that he'll continue to do so. He'll face down EU leaders and Zelensky today, and he will get this deal signed. And if he doesn't, if Zelensky continues to refuse to agree to it, then he has a couple options. One is to pull all U.S. military support, including troops and weapons technicians and intelligence officers, out of Ukraine. And the other one is simply to turn off, Starlink access to Ukraine, forcing Zelensky to sign on the dotted line of whatever peace deal he chooses to conclude with Putin.
Yeah. Do you think the Ukrainians' attack on their nuclear bomber forces of Russia had anything to do with the way things have gone against the neocons at this point?
Well, I think the CIA was likely involved in that to some extent in supporting those attacks. Perhaps just with intelligence, but and I don't know if we may have even discussed this on your show. Whatever extent Trump may have had foreknowledge of that, he claimed he didn't, but he also didn't condemn Ukraine for attacking Russia's nuclear triad and destroying, I think, about 10 of their nuclear bombers, either seriously damaging or destroying them, which constitutes, I think, maybe around 9% of their nuclear bomber fleet. So just imagine how the U.S. would have reacted if we bombed, or if Russia had used bases in southern Canada to attack the U.S. Nuclear bomber fleet. I think we would have responded perhaps with a nuclear response. So we've been very fortunate that Putin is not a hothead. He's a very rational and restrained international actor that is serious about peace. He hasn't been able to achieve peace for a couple of reasons. He's refused to reinvade Kyiv and take the Ukrainian capital and knock Ukraine out of the war. But he's also been unwilling to make the compromises necessary on the Western side to achieve a peace deal short of all-out military victory.
Yeah, I think there's a tension between advisor sets in the administration that have direct access to the president, because I've seen him push back on that and actually say something to the effect of, They attacked their nuclear bomber force, for goodness sake, when he was answering a question about why this war has got to end, and that he didn't sound like he was or for that. He sounded like he was opposed to that, like I was. We got more questions in the audience. Let's go ahead and take a question before we get to the break.
We have Matt, sir.
Thank you, Shell, and thank you, Colonel. I was going to ask about what if a ceasefire would between Russia and Ukraine would actually be in our favor, but you kind of touched on that already throughout the show, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think a ceasefire would not be in our favor. While it would end the fighting temporarily, the fighting would resume because Zelensky wouldn't have any incentive to seriously negotiate with Russia unless the U.S. were to, if Trump were to cut off all aid and assistance, including Starlink access, then I think he would. Well, even in that case, without the fighting, he might not have the incentive there. So, I think the ceasefire would be counterproductive both on the U.S. and the Russian side. But that's what Zelensky wanted. That's what EU leaders wanted. And the reason is they want this war to go on indefinitely. They don't care so much about all the Ukrainian military losses, where they've, according to the estimates I've seen from the Jamestown Foundation, have lost 2 million casualties as of about 3 months ago. So it's been a massive amount of Ukrainian losses. That's about 7% of Ukraine's current population of about 28 million plus. So just incomprehensible in terms of the national catastrophe. 1 or 2 generations of Ukrainian men decimated. That's going to really hurt them demographically, even if the war were to end tomorrow. Trump is very concerned. He's for humanitarian reasons. He wants the killing to end. He wants the death and destruction in Ukraine to end, but he also wants to save Russian lives. And I think that's very, it's very empathetic for him to view lives on both sides as important.
David, do you have confidence in the casualty numbers reported about the Russian armed forces by the Western media at all?
No, and the numbers that President Trump has cited are completely farcical. There's no basis, no evidence for those. What I've seen is Russian casualties of around 300,000 total, of which maybe 120,000 are dead, and that's for the entire 3.5 months of the war, as compared to about 750,000 dead on the Ukrainian side, about 1.25 million injured, of which 750,000 are seriously injured or pretty much permanently out of the war. So Russia has a population 5 times larger than Ukraine's. It has perhaps 18 to 25 million potentially military-age mobilizable men that it could throw into the fight. In terms of a long-term, World War II type total war. In Ukraine, one of the reasons I think you asked me this question, I didn't fully answer it. One of the reasons that Ukraine is losing in Donetsk is because they don't have enough troops to man the front. There's fortifications that Russia encountered that had no Ukrainian troops in them because, according to David Axe, who's a very pro-Ukraine, pro-Zelensky, in an article that he wrote, and this was a cite from, I think, New York Times, Ukraine has only 8 troops deployed per kilometer along whole sections of the front in Donetsk and other regions where it should have 200. So they're woefully short of men, infantry in particular. Their army is not 850,000 strong as Zelensky states, but it's likely around 320,000, 350,000 max, as opposed to 640,000 mostly fresh troops on the Russian side within Ukraine itself.
Yeah, I chuckled. I saw a couple of the propagandist articles about that move east of Pavlovsk there that was so successful, saying, "Oh, don't read anything into that, folks. There were no resistance troops there to get in the way of the Russians." Well, that in and of itself, as you just pointed out, is a major part of this story, and it matters. Well, we got to take another break. Then our last one when we get back. I want to dive into this Article 5 like security guarantees and those kinds of issues and get your thoughts on that. We'll be right back with David Pine on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
In terms of Ukrainian security guarantees, you mentioned the Article 5 guarantee of NATO, an attack on one and it's an attack on all. Russia would allow that to happen, that any further incursions into Ukraine, Russia would understand would be seen as an attack on all NATO members?
No, Jake, that's not what I said. What I said is that we got to an agreement that the United States and other European nations could effectively offer Article 5-like language to cover a security guarantee. So Putin has said that a red flag is NATO admission.
Right.
And so what we were discussing was assuming that that held, assuming that the Ukrainians could agree to that and could live with that, and everything is going to be about what the Ukrainians can live with. But assuming they could, we were able to win the following concession: that the United States could offer Article 5-like protection, which is one of the real reasons why Ukraine wants to be in NATO. We sort of were able to bypass that and get an agreement that the United States could offer Article 5 protection, which was the first time we had ever heard the Russians agree to that.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on More War Monday, and we're talking about what's happening right now as we speak, the ongoing talks of peace, except now the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is meeting with President Zelensky of the Ukraine and the heads of NATO and the other major European Union countries and NATO countries at the White House today to discuss what Mr. Putin said he could agree to and what the United States offered up that it could agree to. And now it's the time of the Ukrainians to say what they can agree to, and that's happening as we speak. Army veteran, strategic planner, combat arms officer, David Pine is with me today as our guest, and we're discussing this. He's deeply knowledgeable in this area. He oversaw the arms cooperation agreements with the Soviet Union, amongst other nations, and has been looking at this for a long, long time. David, these are, I think Mr. Witkoff's language there, one of the things Mr. Witkoff's good at what I've seen observing him, that he's very good at remembering what he said and then correcting people about exactly what he said. Why is that important from that clip there?
Well, I think he didn't want to imply that it was kind of a stealth NATO membership that Ukraine would be getting with these Article 5 guarantees. Article 5, there's a huge misconception about what that is. We're told by the neocons, it seems like every day that, that's like an ironclad guarantee. We have to go to war. If any NATO member, if Montenegro got attacked tomorrow, if South Macedonia gets attacked, then the U.S. has to start World War III with Russia. And that's nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, basically what it says is that we have to go. There's another article that talks about the need to go through, constitutional processes. That would be congressional authorization for, war with the Russian Federation, various other things like that. But essentially, if we could send a strongly worded letter against Putin for invading, Estonia, and that would potentially suffice. Or if we send a single rifle or a single bullet. Basically it's whatever military response that we deem necessary. So those words in Article 5 are really critical, and that's why President Putin has no reason to fear that an Article 5 like guarantee would be any consternation to Russia, because it's not a threat. Essentially, I've been arguing since the beginning of this war that the U.S. and our NATO allies have responded exactly as they would if Ukraine had been a NATO member, with massive arms shipments, but no direct, troops fighting on the front, as military advisors, weapons technicians, perhaps even launching the missiles, providing the target coordinates, helping to plan the war effort. Essentially, Ukraine has been acting as a de facto NATO member state, proving Putin's reason for invading was correct, because that's what he's been trying to overturn. He's been trying to overturn, basically push Ukraine, or push NATO out of Ukraine. So Ukraine is not a NATO member state, but NATO is inside of Ukraine. We all know the NATO troops are inside of Ukraine. We have weapons technicians helping to launch HIMARS and ATACMS missiles against targets. We have had a whole 24-page New York Times article that talked about how a 2-star U.S. general in Germany and Wiesbaden was helping to plan all of Ukraine's offensives. And that general, by the way, I forget his name, but he actually encouraged General, the last commanding general of the Ukrainian armed forces to, have this massive offensive in Kherson that would roll up 15,000 Russian troops. And we know now that Putin was prepared to launch nuclear weapons at Ukraine. It had that offensive been successful. So thank heavens, our general was not successful in persuading Ukraine to Zelensky to make that call.
Yeah, there's a big question as to whether they could have pulled it off to what Western equipment and training or not. It's really difficult to overcome entrenched ideological and dogma mentality, which is not Western. Let's just put it that way. All right, we got another hand up in the audience. Let's take one question from there, and then I've got a wrap up question. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Buckster, sir.
Hey, Colonel. Thank you, Captain Pine. I just have one question for both of you gentlemen. It's related to all this. It's kind of a story that had gone dark. What is up with the biolabs that were over there? Because I distinctly remember Deputy Secretary Victoria Nuland saying that there were at least 40 biolabs over there. She didn't say bioweapons, but biolabs, and that they were not able to secure them before the invasion. Has there been any update on that at all? Thank you.
I haven't seen any updates on that. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There were at least 24 or 25 Ukraine biolabs that the U.S. Had before the war, and that was one of the reasons that Putin cited. He had like this kind of George W. Bush type rationale for invading Ukraine. He said we were there to enforce the peace. Those direct language from Bush's statement, as well as to eliminate the weapons of mass destruction threat, directly referring to those biolabs. So the thing about those biolabs is Victoria Nuland, as Undersecretary of Defense, she testified to Marco Rubio, and Rubio was shocked. He was like, "Wait, this is true?" He thought that he was questioning whether the biolabs existed, and she's like, "Yes, we have those biolabs, and we're afraid that they'll be overrun by advancing Russian forces." So we argue the bioweapons are defensive. But it's kind of like the offensive and defensive nuclear weapons. I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder. You can have a defensive intent, but you can still utilize those weapons in an offensive role. And so I think Russia had legitimate concerns about those biolabs. I don't think it was one of the principal reasons that Russia invaded. It was just kind of icing on the cake to try to, make the U.S. look like hypocrites, because that's the basis we invaded Iraq for in 2003, and then Putin added that as one of the justifications to kind of copy what we said with Iraq.
Yeah, exactly right. I don't have anything to add to that. I don't have any other information either. But it's something that everybody needs to stay paying attention to because as this plays out, because it'll come back, guarantee you. Well, one last question, David. I've seen maps attributed to General Keith Kellogg, who is the president's man with Ukraine as far as his envoy goes, that have Ukraine partitioned and shows U.S., French, and U.K. troops, kind of like the old Berlin partitioning and Germany partitioning post-World War II. A couple of questions about that. One, this is not World War II where you've lost millions of people to casualties and in the hundreds of thousands of deaths and not even counting the civilians, where the entire place is completely destroyed. And two, I'm opposed to American boots on that ground. There's no reason for Americans or even Europeans' boots to be on that ground at all, especially with the buildup that we've given to the Ukrainian armed forces. And three, and Steve Bannon's saying this, and I agree with him, this is just the globalists inside the United States and the Atlantic Council and NATO and European Union trying to pull the United States into another long-term, boots-on-the-ground military commitment somewhere where it's not in our vital national interest to do that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's absolutely no way that President Trump is going to agree to any deal with U.S. peacekeepers on the ground in Ukraine. And Britain and France have stated, well, they can't go to Ukraine unless the U.S. goes. So there's not going to be any. Bottom line is there's not going to be any Western European or NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine. The reports that I've seen say that Trump is looking very favorable on Russian proposals to have essentially BRICS member states have peacekeepers or international observers on the ground, military observers. That would be Chinese troops patrolling some kind of DMZ. It would be Indian troops. I proposed India would be the prime source. I don't want to see Chinese troops there, but and Brazilian troops. So those would be the three main countries where these so-called peacekeepers or international military observers would be located. With the Kellogg plan, of course, had envisioned, I think it was an 18-mile wide DMZ versus the 2.4 mile DMZ we have between North Korea and South Korea. I think Russia they'd be open to that, providing that it's Brazilian, Chinese and Indian, essentially Russian allied troops on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know if Zelensky would agree to that, but I think that's something Russia could agree to.
Yeah, especially with their allies' troops on the ground. So I doubt that would be agreed to. Well, David, thank you very much. So the meeting will wrap up here today. And the next thing we should hear about, hopefully, is another meeting with more people in it, the three principals, Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. And it sounds like Putin invited him to Moscow. So after the meeting wrap up today, I might try to get you back on next Monday to talk about the results of this meeting if there's anything major comes out of it. I hope you'll be available.
Absolutely. I'd love to be on.
Well, thank you, sir. I've had your social media info up the entire show. And tomorrow's Training Tuesday. We've got a new company. It's being founded by a great gentleman that I met. He's from Kentucky. And I'm not going to reveal anything else about it. You got to come watch the show to find out about it. I'll see you tomorrow on Training Tuesday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepcid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory